Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Big Ten Under 10 on the Hoosier Network. Graham Nash, Adam Oppenheim with you as per usual, and today we're talking women's sports. This is our first women's show of the new year, and a lot has changed since last December, so let's get right down to it. Today we're starting with women's basketball, as you might have expected, but we are going to end with a brand new, never-before-seen sport on Big Ten Under 10, so be sure you stick around. Here are your scores from last week's women's basketball action. The 9th-ranked Buckeyes were the only Big Ten team to play twice and win twice last week. They took down the 25th-ranked Wolverines on the road and the unranked Oregon Ducks at home. The Wolverines, they would bounce back, however, and take down the unranked Boilermakers in West Lafayette. The Spartans of Michigan State lost by 5 to unranked Nebraska in a heartbreaker, but they bounced back at home with a win against Washington. Maryland, they lost in a nail-biter to the 4th-ranked USC Trojans. That game was fun, but they bounced back with a win on the road against Wisconsin and with a win at home against the 24th-ranked Golden Gophers of Minnesota. 23rd-ranked Iowa had a really tough week, losing to unranked Illinois in Champaign by 5, and also losing to unranked Indiana at home by 7. Lastly, the 4th-ranked Trojans also took down unranked Penn State at home by a landslide. Adam, we're going to turn to you. The dust is finally starting to settle on the Big Ten season, and currently 7 Big Ten teams, I believe, are ranked. So, in your eyes, who has been the most impressive Big Ten team so far this year?
I think UCLA, even though knowing going into the year they were going to be good, they beat South Carolina, which is a really impressive win. Some people still view them as the best team in the nation, even though they beat them early in the year. Lauren Betts, 6'7" center, is an absolute low down low. And Kiki Rice has brought the turnovers down from 2.5 last year to 1.5 this year. They have a lot of supplemental pieces. They're a good shooting team. They're tough to beat, tops in the conference in field goal percentages, you might assume. But the most surprising team for me is Minnesota. Lost by 7 on the road in College Park. They haven't been really good at women's basketball in the past decade, but they've been great this year. 5 double-digit scores. Let me read you some of these stats. Against Maryland, Maryland was 21 for 21 from the foul line, 45% from 3. Minnesota was 32%. And they lost the game by only 7 on the road against a Maryland team that's in the top 10 in the country. Also, Minnesota, lowest turnovers per game in the Big Ten, 9.7 a game. Wow. That is extremely impressive. Yeah. Minnesota, I mean, I never thought I would see a Minnesota women's basketball team be this good, but they're really impressive.
Never thought you'd see the day. So,
yeah.
Some hope for Minnesota. Now let's go the other side of the coin. Let's give it a flip. Who has been the most disappointing so far?
I don't think there are a ton of disappointing teams because I think, the bottom 4 teams you knew they would be right there near the bottom. But Iowa, I think, has been disappointing this year, obviously without Caitlin Clark this year. But had a little bit of trouble scoring the ball. Lucy Olson came over from Villanova, but that's a different style of play she played there where she would just shoot the ball all the time. Her points per game are down, which is fine. Her efficiency is not going to be as high as you would like it, just below 45%. But they're playing more through their big guys down low in Stolke and O'Grady. And that's way different than what Iowa played before when they were shooting a bunch of threes, 13th in the conference in three-point percentage. But when Clark was there, not only was she creating looks for herself, but for others. And Iowa was just canning a bunch of wide-open threes last year.
I got to be surprised. I'm got to be honest, rather. I'm surprised you didn't say Indiana for a disappointing team so far.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana has been disappointing, but once again, they lost Mackenzie Holmes. I wasn't as high on them as some people, even though they returned a bunch of players. Remember, Mackenzie Holmes, although she was a great scorer, she also created all those three-point shots for others. And when you look at an Indiana team that was tops in the nation in three-point percentage, part of that reason is they had Mackenzie Holmes, and now they've lost Mackenzie Holmes. And they also lost Sarah Scalia. I think Indiana will get better as the season progresses, but, I mean, maybe slightly disappointing, but still, I think the Hoosiers are in a good position.
All right. Well, still some time for both of those teams to see if they can get it back. We're very excited to bring you this next sport for the very first time in Big Ten Under 10 history. And that sport is women's swim and dive. Here are the results from last week's meets. The Indiana Hoosiers are off to a hot start in conference meets, taking down Michigan 160-103 in their quest for back-to-back Big Ten championships. The Hoosiers' cross-state rivals, the Purdue Boilermakers, also got off to a hot start. They took down Notre Dame 182.5 to 117.5 Also took down the University of Kentucky 158 to 142 and Illinois 171 to 129. Northwestern, they also had a clean sweep, taking down Southern Indiana, the University of Chicago, and Penn State. Notably, they walloped the Nittany Lions, beating them 207 to 88. Penn State would, however, they'd bounce back, taking down UChicago themselves 205 to 86. Over on the West Coast, the UCLA Bruins took down Utah 185 to 103. And lastly, Minnesota lost to Arizona State in Arizona State 191 to 109. And that is going to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, a huge thanks to our producer / teleprompter for today, Colin Dusick, for making all of this possible. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at B1G_under10. And come back next week for our next episode of Big 10 Under 10.